Alright, so for this one, it wants the cube root. I cannot take the cube root of 2, right? And really when I'm multiplying like this, I prefer to multiply them together first and then start taking the cube root. So with this 8 though, that's the same thing as 2 to the 3rd power. And the only reason I'm interested in looking at it like that is because this 2 right here. Because this is 2 to the 1st power. So I'm going to do the cube root, and when I multiply 2 to the 1st times 2 to the 3rd, that's 2 to the 2, I always do that, 2 to the 4th is what it needs to be. And then I do x to the 4th times x to the 5th is going to be x to the 9th because you just add the exponents. And then I'm going to look and see how many groups of 3 of these things can I get. So I've got 4 2's under here, so that's one group of 3. So 2 to the 1st comes out. And then 3 groups of 3 in x to the 9th. And what's left underneath is just 2 because there's nothing left over when I get 3 groups of 3 out of x to the 9th. That's the answer. Okay, so for number 4, you can use your calculator. Okay, you're taking 2 of the same bases. When you multiply them together, you're adding your exponents. So if I added 1/2 to 3/2, that's 8 to the 4/2. Now you can plug 8 to the 4/2 in your calculator, but 4 over 2 is the same thing as 2, so that's just 8 to the 2nd power, and that's just 64. So you can plug this in your calculator, and you can plug it in from the beginning if you want to. So you can make this, if I go here and go 8 to the, and this is going to be 1/2, and I got to keep hitting over until I get down to the bottom, times 8 to the, and then we're going to do 3/2, and then just hit enter, and there's 64. So either way you do it, it doesn't matter. You'll get to the answer. So this next one, they're all the same base, so I just add the exponents. 1/4 plus 1/4 is 2/4, plus 3 more fourths is 5/4, so 16 to the 5/4. This is an excellent candidate for your calculator. So we're just going to go 16 to the, use your fraction button, 5 over 4, and hit enter, and that's 32. That's the answer. You can see it in there.
After when we do the 5/4 in the calculator, do we have to hit the side arrow and then enter?
No, just hit enter.
Okay.
Right, if you're trying to multiply this times something, then yes. If you're trying to multiply 16 to the 5/4 times something, then yes, you're going to hit over until the times gets down on the bottom. Otherwise, the time stays up with the fraction and for your exponent.
Yeah.
All right, so this one, I'm going to change this to a 1/2 before I subtract. So this is going to be x to the 1/2 power. And I got 1/2 because this is to the 1 and this is the understood 2. So x to the 1/2 over x to the 5th. When you're dividing like this, if you're adding exponents when you're multiplying, you subtract the exponents when you're dividing. So that's just x to the 1/2 minus 5. Okay? I personally don't like dealing with fractions, so I'm going to do the calculator. So I'm going to go 1/2, and now you're going to hit over so that you're not in the denominator, minus 5, and that'll tell you that it's negative 9/2. Okay? So with negative 9/2, that's x to the negative 9/2, or that can be written as 1 over positive x to the 9/2. Because whenever you end up with a negative answer, that tells you it goes in the bottom. Okay. So for the next one, for number 7, you are raising a power to a power. This is that one where we go psi, give it a try. All you got to do is multiply from the rap video. So I'm multiplying exponent times exponent. So I am not multiplying that 2/3 times 8. I'm multiplying it times 8's exponent of 1 that's understood to be there. So 2/3 times 1 is going to be 8 to the 2/3 power. This is going to be x to the, and when you multiply 3 times 2/3, you get 6 over 3. Z to the 9 times 2/3 is going to be 18 over 3. So again, 8 to the 2/3 is going to be one of those great candidates for 8 to the 2/3. That's going to be a great candidate for your calculator. That's just going to equal 4. Alright, so you're going to make that 4. And then 3 goes into 6 2 times. 3 goes into 18 6 times. And that's as simplified as that answer can possibly get. For number 8, you're still doing that side, just give it a try. All you gotta do is multiply, because you're raising this power, these two powers, up to the power of 4. So I'm multiplying the exponents again. So I get 8x, to the 1/2 times 4, which is just 2. Okay. Y to the 2 raised to the 4th power, so I'm just multiplying again. So I get y to the 8th. And then the cube root of y cubed, though, that cancels each other out. It would be the same thing as y to the 3 over 3 power, which is just 1. So that's going to be just y to the 1st. So now to multiply these two, I just add their exponents, and I get x squared y to the 9th. And that's it. The next one, raising the power to a power again. I'm just going to multiply the 1/2 times the exponents. I get m squared, because 4 times 1/2 is 2. N, because 2 times 1/2 is just 1. And then the square root, that's that understood 2, of m squared is just m. And the square root of n squared is just n. So I'm going to combine the exponents by adding the exponents of the like bases. So m squared times m is just m cubed. And then n times n is just n squared.
Can I read one of those sheets?
Alright, so the next one, that's it for number 9. So the next one, in order to subtract the exponents, you want this exponent to be a fraction. So this one is going to be, I'm going to make that 2/3. So that's the same thing as z to, I write the number 5, z to the 5/3 over z to the 2/3. So at that point, I'm just going to subtract 5/3 minus 2/3. So that's just z to the 3/3, which is just z. Okay, the next one, I'm going to simplify the 2 over 8 first. So 2 over 8 is just the same thing as 1/4. And then just off to the side, I'm going to say, okay, that's the same thing as x to the 3/2 minus 9/2, because I subtract the exponents. So that's going to be x to the 6/2, but negative because it's 3 minus 9. So that's the same thing as x to the negative 3. And because it's negative, that gives me placement. So that tells me the x is going to go on the bottom. That's the answer. And the last one, you've got the 2x to the negative 1/4 times 2y to the 3/4 over x squared y to the 1/2 power. So this is where I'm going to go ahead and deal with my coefficients of the 2's and multiply those together and make them 4. The next thing I'm going to deal with is my x's. So that is the same thing as x to the negative 1/4 minus 2. X to the negative 1/4 minus 2. If you plug that in your calculator, you get negative 9/4. So it's the same thing as x to the negative 9/4. So being negative tells me where to put it. I'm going to put it on the bottom. Right on the bottom. And now I'm going to deal with my y's, and I'm going to go 3/4 minus 1/2. 3/4 minus 1/2 is the same thing as 1/4. It's a positive 1/4, so it'll be y to the 1/4 power. And that's my answer. From the review sheet, someone asked if I could do one like these. So this is just taking your exponent and dividing it by 4. So x goes into it evenly 4 times. So you got to remember I1, negatives in the middle. If you end up with, after your division, a 0.25, 0.50, 0.75, or 0.00. And the way I think of it is I remember 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, 4/4. That's the amount of change that you'd have. So when I plug this in and I get to the third one down, or no, excuse me, 4 goes into that evenly, so that means the answer is just going to be 1. Here, 27 divided by 4 is 8.75. So the 0.75 tells me that it's just negative I. And then the 121 divided by 4 is just 30.25. So that 0.25 is the important part, and it tells me that it's just I. I think that's about it for the review.